if we focus on how people feel, we pick them up and we make them feel like, hey, I understand you, because feeling understood is one of our core desires as human beings. Then they feel seen as an individual. And that's what they'll connect to. And you won't have to sell anymore. They'll ask you, oh, that's great. Do you have time in November?
Hello, and welcome to the Driven Female Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Melita Campbell, award-winning business coach, marketing veteran, and value whisperer. Now, usually on this show, each week I speak with successful women about their business journey, the most important lessons they've learned along the way, and I ask them to share some of their expertise with you. But each week in November, since it's International Men's Month, I've invited 4 inspiring men onto the show. However, the goal of the podcast remains the same: to help you dream bigger and achieve more by learning from what works and gaining fresh insights, tools, and tips from successful business owners. And to further help you in that goal, I've recorded a training for you that you can access free of charge from my website, melitacampbell.com. That training will help you with the perpetual question of, but how do I find my next client? How can I talk about my business in a way that isn't contrived or sleazy, but brings my next client a step closer to my business? And how can I sell my services in a way that feels natural and authentic? You'll get all the answers in the short training that you can access from the homepage of my website, melitacampbell.com. But before you go and enjoy that, let me introduce the very first man I'll be speaking to on the podcast, Christopher Lübbers. He's the founder of The Power of Speech and a speaker coach for TEDxLausanne. After seeing his own public speaking journey enhance his career, while also opening the door to many hidden opportunities, he felt compelled to share what he'd learned. He is convinced that you already have more of the skills needed to speak up and lead with confidence and joy than you may have realized. He is on a mission to help you uncover those skills, sharpen your story, and confidently inspire the world with your message, as he believes it's time your message was heard just the way you feel it. Hi, Chris. It's great to have you with us on the show today. And I'm particularly excited because you are our first ever man on the show. So welcome.
Oh, wow. I didn't actually realize that was the first ever. Thank you very much for having me. That's an even greater honor. I'm really thrilled to be here.
You're welcome. Yeah, November is International Men's Month, and I thought, well, this is the opportunity to bring in some male voices into the podcast as well. And it was great to start with you because you are all about empowering female voices. And the strapline for our show is, of course, dream bigger and achieve more. So I think your message is going to really play into that so nicely. So we were going to dig into all about how women can speak up more confidently in just a moment. But before we do, I'd love it if you could share with the audience how you came to be in this space in the first place.
Yeah, a wonderful question. I mean, which entrepreneur doesn't love to be asked that question, to talk about himself or herself? Now, sometimes with a little wink of an eye, I like to say, I was born the eldest of 5 children. So if you want at home to get my mom's or dad's attention, I really had to deliver a quite engaging speech to have the undivided attention at least. And I think that probably laid a little bit of the foundation that I'm benefiting from today. But on a more serious note, when I got into the university, I looked out for opportunities to speak. I studied at the École Hôtelière de Lausanne, which is already a curriculum focusing a lot on presentations. And if I'm quite honest, I think in the beginning, it was a bit of my ego that wanted the attention. So I sought out opportunities to stand in front of people. But very quickly, I realized that I was so eager to be a good speaker that I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I was stressed to remember all the great delivery techniques that I'd seen on YouTube, that people have shared with me, that I read in books, that when I actually stood on stage or in front of an audience, I was stressed and I was tense and my breathing was just up in the neck. And then what I did is I founded a committee with fellow students, and it was created over coffee, really, but we wanted to create a space that feels safe, where we can rehearse, because they also enjoyed speaking in public, but they experienced the same thing I did. And over a short period of time, many other students joined, and I noticed that a lot of them feel that it's really stressful, and yet they want to give great presentations, to have good grades, and to excel and talk about their ideas that are brilliant. So I started standing more next to them, sharing tips that I'd received, and we gave each other feedback and grew together. So that really was a wonderful experience. And over my studies, it grew into more and more people coming to me, asking me for advice. And that was the first time when I realized that what I said back then, seemed to have really helped them. And I was surprised because to me, it seemed quite natural. And I thought, yeah, this is what I do and this is what I would do. And they came back to me saying, hey, thank you very much. That really helped. The presentation went super well. Obviously, I was delighted, and it happened more and more often. And when I then graduated and I moved into leading teams in food and beverage departments in hotels, which was my first career, I had to rely on my public speaking skills to manage change, to handle guest complaints, which really happens quite often in the luxury segment or in all segments of hospitality. And suddenly, colleagues from the reception, from the sales department, from other areas came to me and said, Chris, we hear you all the time handle these situations. You seem so calm and confident. I mean, how do you do that? And again, I was like, oh, really? I certainly don't feel like that inside of me at that time. But yeah, sure, I can share an advice. And again, I found myself standing right next to them. And I think it really clicked for me a couple of years later when I had lunch with my colleague, Natalie, who I thought was a super inspiring colleague, a great leader, so empathetic and competent in my eyes, and always polite and perfectly organized with guests. And she said, there's this promotion that I could get, but I think it would make me stand in front of people more and present more often. And that thought alone makes me super anxious and I can't sleep. I don't think I should accept it because that would just make my life a lot less enjoyable. And that has really touched me, Melita, because I saw what I'd seen before, that the fear of speaking in public, the fear of standing there, is making a person, an inspiring individual who to me should be the first leader of a group, step down or not step up for a great opportunity. And it wasn't the first time that I witnessed it. And that was the moment when I thought, no, I want to do something about it. I want to use what apparently I'm good at to help people, especially female leaders and individuals and change makers, to feel calm and confident when they speak about what they care about in front of an audience, a team, or even in some cases, a conference. So what I did then was what I sometimes like to call a leap of faith. I quit my job. I went soul searching to really connect with my purpose and to sort of dig deep inside of me. Is this really what I want to do? Or is this just my ego trying to pull a stunt? Wow, Chris, you've been told you're good at it. Better do that professionally so people keep telling you how great you are. And I went soul searching. And after that year, I realized that actually there is no other option but to start my own company and do it because I love it, because it is enjoyable to me. It often comes easy and naturally, which doesn't mean that I don't think all the time about it and I'm obsessed about it and my imposter syndrome is there, but then I really find it easy to be with the clients and to be fully with you, to stand right next to you rather than in front of you. And that's when I started my business. And perhaps to wrap up and close the circle, because you asked about, how I came to be here helping driven female leaders, change makers, entrepreneurs most of the time, is I've just found at some point that my style of coaching and my techniques seem to speak to women particularly. So more and more, I was referred by women to other women, and I was contacted by them, that my universe suddenly evolved into having a lot of female individuals in there, which of course doesn't mean that I'm only here for women. I mean, I also work with men. Obviously, I try to be open to everyone. It's really important, but it has just happened. And I find it inspiring because I've met so many outstanding individuals who are so connected to their purpose and their message. They just don't know yet how to talk about it so that the audience hears the message exactly as they feel them in their heart.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's what really stood out to me when we first met. So we worked together at TEDxLausanne, and is this idea that you recognize that we need more female voices, and that it's not that the voices aren't there. It's not that the passion and the ideas aren't there. It's just that there are too many fears perhaps standing in their way, like your colleague Natalie, where they're thinking, this is too stressful, I'm not good enough. And, we were just talking earlier in a visibility challenge I'm leading at the moment. And this fear of I'm not good enough, this fear that I'm an imposter, I'm going to be found out, I'm going to be judged in some way, is just so strong. They're just not taking that first step. And in my corporate career, when I was running women's networks, I saw that time and time again. And yet, once they just took that first step and felt safe and comfortable to try and to practice, then they were off. And I see it with my entrepreneurial clients now, just taking those baby steps, showing to themselves that they can do it. They can not only survive, but they can help other people so much with their message. Then it has this beautiful snowball effect. Is that something you've seen as well, that when women take that small step, suddenly it's a tiny step, but it leads to the next step, and before they know it, they've taken actually very huge strides forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I would sign that immediately. It's exactly my experience. And to be honest, sometimes I wonder if I'm actually in a position to talk about it the way I do, because I don't think women need to find their voice. They have it. What I do is I just make it simple for them to captivate their audiences with their message, which they are very connected with, and they know very well what they want to say. They are extremely competent and equipped to have all the success. But you're right, there is sometimes that fear of being seen as too emotional when you put your heart into your delivery, like many men naturally do it. And that slows them down a bit, which is such a shame, because the message is wonderful and it needs that energy, it needs that love, if you want to speak poetically, to really make the audience feel it. And that's what we remember. So what I observe time and time again is that when I help them add a bit of structure to their presentation, tailoring it a bit more to their audience to make sure it's really landing and maximizing the impact, I love seeing what opportunities they create for themselves. I had a client the other day who wrote me a WhatsApp after 3 sessions of one of my individual programs saying, Chris, you can't believe what just happened. I gave a presentation and my N+5, who I've met twice in my life, has sent me an email saying, I heard a new star in presenting is born. And I mean, that made my day. Just to see, wow, I haven't done that much, but that woman has created the opportunity for herself just by believing in herself and feeling calm and confident when presenting, because that's what we feel in the audience too. So yes, it takes so little to take a huge leap forward.
I love that. And I see that echoed in people's businesses as well. They're just missing a little bit of that structure, that start point, a little bit of encouragement and a nudge sometimes, and then they're off. So I love that that's your experience. And I love that you help make that simple for women. And we've had this conversation before, and I love your perspective. Like, well, women have got so much to deal with. The last thing they need is to have to learn whole new skills or to try and become someone else in order to get their message across. And in fact, as you say, it's already there. They already have everything. It's just that little bit of structure, and then they're off. So what would be that first step? If someone listening feels, I think I've got a message here, I would love to share it, but I don't know where to begin. Are there any simple steps that they could already start to take to feel more comfortable on stage or start becoming more visible with that message?
Yes, there are many you can take. And I think what I want to say first is be mindful and be just open enough to pick the strategy to test the water that works for you. For example, for someone, it might be, hey, I'm going to go to 3 networking events this month because I'm extrovert. I love meeting people. I just talk about this idea and see how they react. That could be cool. I know people who love doing it and have a blast. I also know people who would think, this would be suicide. I'm definitely not going to do that, right? And perhaps even I would be sort of half-half, depending on how comfortable I feel with the idea. Another option would be to write something about it. Even though my work is about public speaking, I have a lot of clients who are brilliant in writing a draft for a speech, which is then in written word, something beautiful to read. And I think you could sometimes print it in a magazine right away, and I'm in awe. I'm saying, well, I'm not at all a writer, but this is good work. So write it down and give it someone to read, or read it out loud, recording yourself. Because hearing our own voice is sometimes a bit awkward. I mean, even for me as a trainer, I have to listen to myself quite often. But there is something funny that happens when we hear ourselves, or even record yourself on your phone with a video. It's a bit more awkward, but more helpful. There is a part of our brain who still sees or hears that individual as a third person. Although we know it's us, we still hear other shades of the voice. We see other behaviors of the body language. And you can see, how do I feel about that message? You will immediately be able to push it to a 2.0 level. And the third option could obviously be to contact a person you respect in your network, perhaps not your closest friend, but someone, who you've acquainted with, but to push yourself a little bit above that, frontier of, it's not a friend, I love her or I love him, but someone who is perhaps a bit scary to you to speak about something new, and just give them, how did that make you feel now? Don't ask them, can I get your feedback, or what do you think about the idea? People are sometimes overwhelmed. They will feel the pressure to improve it, to help you to solve a problem. And that will probably only make you feel mediocre at best, because you suddenly have a task to fix something that's not broken. But if you ask them, hey, how did that make you feel? Or what's your first reaction? Then you usually get praise, or it's, oh, wow, yeah, I have to think about it. I mean, this is a wonderful thing to hear then, because you realize that already that first version of your idea made them think. And that's something to explore, because that's something you eventually want to do.
I love that idea of finding a way to test the idea, but picking whichever method feels most comfortable for you. So you don't have to suddenly jump on stage and push yourself out there big style. You can just introduce it at a networking event, or in an article, or, as you say, a bit of a mix. So already presenting it to someone within your network and seeing how they feel. Yeah, great tips. I want to come back to something that you said right at the beginning. When you started to talk and people are asking you for tips and advice, that it felt natural. And then you took that leap and you took that time out to find out, is this really what my purpose is? Because it feels too easy, perhaps. And I know our zone of genius is often that space where we are having an impact. We're getting great feedback from other people, but for ourselves, we're thinking, well, hang on a minute, this is too easy. This feels too natural. Surely this can't be it.
Yeah. So true.
I'd love to know a bit more about that process. During that time when you were questioning yourself, was there anything, or were there any techniques that you used or came across that you now use with your clients as well, that you think, this really helped me believe that this is the path for me, that I can take this first step, that this could be my passion and my purpose in life?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. And I have to say, I think the greatest work I've done is to work with the inner child and to sort of learn more about it, belief structures and systems that drive us, that are sort of stored in our cell memory, and to understand more what makes us tick. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners here have done some work in the personal development field already, or they know something about it. That's, I think, the first step that has really helped me to understand why I feel a certain way about certain topics or certain decisions I take. And part of it was to realize that me, having lived the first 20 years of my life in Germany, where there is sort of this cultural stigma that work needs to be complicated and demand sacrifices, it was obviously against my very nature to potentially someday earn a living with something that is uncomplicated and enjoyable for me, which doesn't need any sacrifice. So I worked a lot on actually allowing myself deep within me that I may use my strengths and talents, and only those that I enjoy using, for my own benefit, and not to make someone else richer or to pursue a path that I feel others expect of me, or that others have said, well, you could be a hotel manager tomorrow. I mean, of course, we all have a part in us that feels great if you get that compliment. If you're being told, hey, Melita, you'll be the next CEO of our corporate firm. I think had you heard that a while ago when you were still in that career, I'm sure a part of you would have loved the compliment that, oh, no, I don't think so. But if you hear it every week, perhaps at some point you would have thought, maybe I'd like that, right? But it would probably not have made you happy knowing what you do today and seeing how passionate you are about your work. You've also clearly found your area of expertise and genius zone. So I think that is something, if I were to share a less tangible advice, it is what I've found to be true ever since I started that journey, is that the more I look inside of myself, the more I take care of myself and try to make sure that I'm centered and detached, that I'm fine and calm within me with myself looking in the mirror, the better I found my business to go and the better I've found to coach and to be with my clients. It's not about proving that I'm a good coach in the sessions anymore, which I tried to do in the beginning. That was super difficult and hard. But today I really pay a lot of attention and practice a lot of self-care to be in a position where I can be uncompromisingly next to you, looking at your goal and helping you to win all the time. And that's what I do most of the time, because I also have bad days. But that's how I try to evaluate whether I'm a good coach or not, is through your success, how it feels to you if you do what you really want to do.
So powerful. And I love that you gave yourself permission to feel good about what you're doing and permission to believe in yourself, to put yourself first. And I think that's really powerful advice for women as well, because we are brought up to be the nurturers. We are responsible often for the children or elderly people or something else. And we have this habit of putting everyone else in front of ourselves, but that just leaves us depleted. If we come from a place, as you say, of being centered, of really believing in ourselves first, believing we're worth taking care of, and that place of self-love. And I see this more and more. If you do come from that place of self-love and respect, you do put the boundaries in place, you do make the investments that are going to help you and others more. And so I really love that advice. I think that's just really powerful, and it all starts with just giving yourself permission to do that.
Yeah, thank you. What I found was the deciding factor is that where it felt before, I felt often paralyzed and in the dark about why this is happening to me. Why am I sabotaging myself? Why am I feeling bad? Or why am I having so little confidence in my skills? But going through that process, understanding that it is a logical consequence of some events that happen and some belief structures that were established, which are not my fault. It is just this thing that has happened that really, took the anchors away, and it didn't resolve everything immediately, but it gave me an explanation, which really helped, because now I had something that I understand, which I could work on. And that needs a bit of patience, which I usually don't have. But you can't change habits that are everywhere in our body and were practiced for over 30 years in 5 minutes. But I really love that I felt progress constantly. Small at first, yes, but constantly. So I always felt somewhere something that made me keep going, because I saw I was getting better and better and enjoying it more and more and more. And the more and more clients and contacts came into my little universe that I've always dreamt of, but never had.
Yeah.
And that is wonderful, because then you are surrounded by people who you love, who are inspiring to you, and oftentimes you are inspiring to them. And that's just a wonderful universe to work in, really, not to say to live in.
Absolutely. And I can't really not ask this question, but have you noticed any differences or even commonalities between what makes a woman feel comfortable on stage or what makes them more fearful than men? Do you see a difference there?
Never thought about it. I have to say that in my universe, if I were speaking a bit more generally, I obviously also coach men, but I feel that the men who come to me have a more pronounced feminine side. In other words, they're more connected to their emotions. They usually appear more empathetic and are more open for feedback. So I feel like in these traits that are then visible on stage, which usually makes an audience connect with the speaker, are then rather similar. If I have to pick one, and I think it could then apply to both, but since I work mostly with women, I see it a lot, is the fear of actually being successful. A lot of my speakers, when they see how much of an impact they suddenly have, and in the first moments realizing, oh my gosh, I'm delivering a brilliant presentation, everyone's listening. And then there is sort of a metaphorical 5 minutes of, oh my God, what do I do now? I'm actually doing it. I'm actually successful, right? And that is something that I find half fascinating, half intimidating, because I've experienced it myself. When my business took off and things are going great, I found it difficult to allow myself the success, because again, it's like, yeah, I'm speaking about something I'm passionate about. I really enjoy doing it, and now it's working. I mean, and then the imposter comes to kick in. So that's something on stage that I see from that group of people a lot that they have to sort of overcome it and say, yes, actually, I've created for myself. This is not a coincidence. I'm doing it and I've created it. Whereas on the more, let's say, masculine dominated side of speakers, which you can also, of course, watch on YouTube and see at conferences sometimes. It's not all of them, but there are these profiles. I think we can all think of at least one. I feel like they are quickly unsettled and perhaps not on the forefront, but within nervous, when they don't get that ever increasing level of recognition and praise they are used to. For example, the other day at an event, I saw a speaker who seemed super confident. He had a great message. He was clearly used to speaking on larger stages, but he spoke so incredibly fast and made the jokes in a way that sort of in the audience, we were forced to laugh because we felt like we have to laugh. And it's not that they weren't funny, but it felt like there was such a tsunami, such a wave coming our way that we didn't have any chance at all to connect with him, but we were just overwhelmed by the command of English, by the pace, by his slides and everything. So sometimes I wonder, how would such a speaker perform if he were to deliver a completely different talk like my clients do, that leaves space for the audience to connect with the speaker, that makes the speaker pull up the protective curtain a little bit and give us a little glimpse behind the scenes, which is what we eventually want. So yeah, I don't want to judge anyone. I'm not an expert on it. It's just a thought that ran through my mind when I was sitting there listening.
When I worked in corporate, I used to do communication coaching for leaders. And one thing that we really encouraged them to do, and one thing they were really fearful of, was being vulnerable. Yeah. And yet with speakers, having a bit of that vulnerability is so important because, as you say, that does, you described it there, it lifts the curtain a little bit and lets the audience in and draws them towards you. And I think that is something that women can do quite naturally, but at the same time, be quite fearful of, because they don't want to be seen as emotional and vulnerable and, oh no, we have to be more like the men perhaps. Do you feel that's accurate? And what would your advice be in that respect for anyone who is worried about taking that step?
I feel it's very accurate. You have summarized it perfectly. At least that's what I observe and discuss a lot with my clients. Now, my advice is actually a little comment on the reality. Yes, showing vulnerability on stage is a powerful tool and is what great speakers learn to do. But it is very different from being vulnerable towards your partner, your children, or your close friends. Because on stage, it is, and excuse me for simplifying it perhaps too much, but it is a means to getting your message across. And that doesn't mean at all that he will not tell the truth or not share your real honest story, but you will plan the level of vulnerability and the depth of insight you're going to share in a way that it supports your message. You come to deliver a message to make people remember you, how they felt, and your message. And then you can employ vulnerability to make them really connect with your purpose and stand on stage for who you are. It doesn't mean that you have to strip naked, metaphorically, reveal everything that's in your soul, even in the deepest corner where you don't dare to go. No, not at all. So the advice is, think about it strategically. Pick one story. Pick one experience that's meaningful to your speech, deliver it sincerely, openly, and honestly, but also stop when it's done. It's not a one-way therapy session.
Great advice. I love that. And you mentioned there the word strategy, which makes me think, for entrepreneurs and business owners, when we speak on stage, it is usually part of our marketing strategy that we want to be more visible. We're building up our credibility. We want to attract new clients in. Where's the balance there between sharing something really valuable and actually promoting your business? Because of course you don't want to go up there and just sell. Nobody enjoys that at all. Doesn't feel comfortable for the presenter or the audience. But at the same time, we want them to know or feel compelled to take that next step if they're interested to come and work with us. Have you got any advice on how to manage that balance?
Focus on how you make them feel. I can say from my business as a coach, and I'm sure there are many entrepreneurs listening in who provide a service of some sort or the other that has a human element. So if you only run an e-shop, perfectly acceptable, but you probably have very little human contact touch points with your customer. However, if you're a trainer, a coach, a mentor, you do. And I feel that most of our clients pick us for how they feel in our presence or with us at their side. So that is something you should focus on. When you speak on stage with the goal of promoting your business, try to simply create a feeling that is very close to how it feels working with you. And then you don't have to mention all of your products. You can perhaps share an anecdote of what has happened the other day. Sometimes it's a great idea to share a mini success story of one of your clients, which again focus on the feeling of that client, hinting at storytelling here. And again, you will establish yourself as a human being that people will want to have close to them. And that's what makes them decide to work with you, or to schedule that coffee chat call, or to go on your website to order your book or download your tips and to go into your universe. Because today I feel that we are being bombarded with suggestions to buy something, from the cookie-related advertisements next to our Google search, in our Instagram feeds, on our LinkedIn pages. It's everywhere. Sometimes we don't even notice that it's advertisement. So we are very reluctant to be sold yet another thing, I feel, most of the time. But if we focus on how the people feel, we pick them up and we make them feel like, hey, I understand you, because feeling understood is one of our core desires as human beings, then they feel seen as an individual. And that's what they'll connect to. And you won't have to sell anymore. They'll ask you, oh, that's great. Do you have time in November? Or do you still take clients this year? And that's things I'm being asked regularly. And that is a wonderful opportunity, obviously, because then you're being asked. And of course, then you shoot and you're ready. But I think everyone is ready at that point.
Yeah, I think that's really the key to selling without selling, isn't it? To help them have a feeling and to believe that you are the one that can solve their problem, because everyone wants their problem solved. Everybody likes to buy things, we just don't like to be sold to. So yeah, great advice again, thank you. And we mentioned earlier that the reason we met was through TEDxLausanne, and I know a lot of people listening to the show have got ambitions. On their vision board they have the TEDx logo. What does it take, or how would they know that they have a message that's good enough for the TEDx stage? And how would you know when the right time to put yourself forward for that is? Because it's quite a daunting prospect to put yourself forward for a TEDx talk, and it can trigger those imposter-like feelings for people. What would be your advice on when to do a TEDx talk, and if that's really the right thing for you or not?
That's the question for $500,000 or francs, really. I think it's always the right time if you have that idea. Now, let me pick up at what you hinted, this vision board. I feel that we all have, at least in our minds, a vision board for our journey as an entrepreneur, where we have sales goals or dream clients or revenue or number of programs, you name it, depending on what business you have. And I feel for many people you are referring to now, the TEDx talk is on that vision board. And I think if it's on there, you'll have a hard time giving a TED talk. But there is another vision board. There's your purpose. There is what is deeply within you that you're connected with. What do you do? I mean, I help people to get their message across just the way they feel it. I know it is what I do professionally, but I'm really deep in my heart, I'm connected to it because I want to feel understood and I love helping them. So my purpose is to help as many people, which is not my goal to earn money, but I want to do it. And today I'm in a fortunate position that for some time when doing it, I receive money to pay my rent and so on. Your TED Talk should be on that board, because then you're talking about something that is really meaningful to you, a message that the world needs to hear. The audience will feel differently during your speech. You will find it easier to orchestrate your speech and to deliver it with the openness, the love, and the passion it needs. It can surely then, once you develop it, be augmented and complemented by elements from the other vision board, because you are an expert in your field, no question about it. But the origin, the root has to be on this passion, professional life purpose vision board. Now, to answer the question about the when and how, as soon as you have that idea, you're basically ready, because no one prepares a TED Talk alone. Let's say at TEDxLausanne, where we are, we have brilliant coaches who support you. It is perfectly acceptable and common practice that TEDx talks are being prepared by coaches who have experience doing it and helping you to drill down to that message, to make it into, as Ted would put it, the best talk of your life. What you can check before you approach one of the TEDx teams of the world is, do I have enough meat to the bone? There is an idea that is brilliant, but you should ask yourself, why me? Why now? And is there enough content, examples, arguments, and perhaps even hard facts that I can provide to actually make it into a 12 to 18-minute talk? And perhaps, if I may, Melita, share one test you can run yourself on your phone. Google your idea. Imagine how you would call your TEDx talk, or you type in your idea and see what pops up. If you have among the first results from YouTube, for example, 6 TEDx talks that speak about pretty much the idea you have, maybe your idea needs a bit of fine-tuning because it is already out there, which doesn't make it impossible, but your chances are a bit slimmer. However, if there's nothing, but there are perhaps a lot of results that are more indicating that people are looking for answers on that subject, well, I mean, then you have just found gold. And then you should hurry up to approach a TEDx team to put your idea out there and make it happen, because the world needs to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to get your idea out there before someone else does.
As well, of course, yes.
Yeah, fantastic tip. Thank you. And I can see on your banner behind you, anyone can become a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say for those people who are feeling right now that, it's a nice strategy speaking on stage, but I'm not a storyteller. That could never be me. How could you reframe that for them?
I would first of all jump in and insert the word yet. I'm not yet a storyteller, but this is more the coach in me. So it's a bit bold to say it here in a podcast because it's very easy to say it. It's my job and I love it. But what I can tell you and everyone listening here is good public speaking does not require talent. Of course, anything in life, if you're just gifted, is a bit easier. But public speaking, especially if it's stressful for you right now and you feel, wow, I really have that knot in my stomach when I think about it, it might feel like you have to climb Everest before it gets that tiny bit better. And it really is the opposite. I'm so amazed again and again to see how fast my clients make progress when they have simple techniques they can rely on that are really not rocket science, and they realize how simple it is to make the audience understand them. And that really is all it takes to feel calm and confident. Of course, we can add on super cool skills, which is like the gift wrapper if you want to become extra cool in audience engagement. Yeah, there's a catalog of a million things we can do. But focusing on 2 already does the trick, for example. 4 great delivery techniques. And storytelling is something that might seem a bit new or out of your comfort zone, because on the one hand, it is a term we hear all the time in marketing and everywhere, and it's certainly a powerful concept, yet we often don't really know how it works. But remember, we are wired to love stories. Ever since humanity has existed, knowledge, information has been passed on in the form of stories around campfires, cave paintings, and it is something we are just wired to connect with. So it is a powerful tool to communicate information, and it is very simple to apply because you just have to follow 5 basic principles and perhaps find within yourself a little courage to test it and to actually do it. And it will already work. That's all there is. And you'll see how the audience suddenly drops silent. The imposter in your brain will think, oh my God, what's happening? Everyone's so silent. I'm really messing up here. Oh my God, oh my God. And that's why before every TEDx talk, I tell my speakers who are standing with me next to the stage before they're going on, tell them, just remember, the more quiet it is in the room, the better you're actually doing, because you captivate the audience.
Yeah, I love that. The silence sometimes is scary. We think, oh no, I have to do more and I have to fill that space. So yeah, great insight. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next for your business? You help female entrepreneurs and leaders to share their message, share their story. And I know you do that mostly one-to-one. What's the next evolution for your business?
The next step is that I'm really trying to change the game on a bigger scale, because whenever I speak to companies, I hear leaders, irrespective if they're male or female, sharing with me, hey, we've heard the call. We want to bring women up, which I think is the absolute necessity. We all talk about it. And then comes the but. But we often get I don't think I feel quite ready yet. or, ooh, yeah, I'd love to, but maybe soon, right? And that's why I've developed a female empowerment bootcamp, which gives companies the opportunity to select those high potentials who say they feel not quite ready, but the people who want to promote them know that they are absolutely high potentials they want up there because they are brilliant women. And that bootcamp is a 1-week bootcamp with a 6-month support that does exactly that. It's based on my most successful individual programs that have seen the participants being promoted within 6 months, raise in confidence and speak up and lead with confidence and joy at work. And it helps those 6 women who run through the bootcamp develop all these skills, develop perhaps even a bit of peer support, because we all need that best buddy who cheers for us. That really helps. We all love it. And why not have another inspiring woman next to you do that? So there's the strength from within. And then, I mean, imagine how it feels when then finally your boss comes to you and says, hey, I want to talk to you again about that idea to, have you at that seat at the table. And you feel within, hell yes, I'm ready. Let's do this. So that's how I try to make the world a bit more grandchild friendly from the side of a speaker coach launching this bootcamp.
I love the sound of that bootcamp. And as you know, when I worked in corporate and I was working with the women's networks, it really was this fear of speaking up that was holding women back. And myself included. It was only when I was pushed by a friend to go to Toastmasters and start my public speaking journey. And, hands up, it took me 6 months before I actually said anything. I was hiding behind being a timekeeper. So no one noticed that I wasn't actually standing up and speaking. But it took me a long time. And, that was nearly 20 years ago now. It hasn't been a case of I was jumping up and getting on stage. But even in those early days, before I started speaking at Toastmasters, just hearing other people's feedback, seeing other people, being inspired by that peer group, I already started speaking up more at work, and people started listening because I'd learned to formulate my thoughts in a clear manner. And I got 3 promotions before I even spoke. So I can imagine that, I can imagine that people that come and do your boot camp with a real professional in a week, I'm so excited to see what happens for them, because having gone through it myself in a kind of longer way and on my own, more or less, it had really incredible outcomes for me. So I'm excited to see what happens for your participants.
Yeah, I'm excited to deliver it because I really love seeing the progress. And maybe let me add one thing, because I hear that a lot as well. I don't want at all to get the message across that all the women or everyone listening has to love giving presentations. It is something for some people, and it's something that other people don't love doing. What I want to create and put you guys in a spot is that you have the skills to do it when you identify that opportunity. When you realize, hey, if I did it a bit better, or if I knew how to create success for myself for those presentations that matter, because the people I want to be seen by are attending, that's the spot I want you to be in, that you can take that opportunity and that you can create your own career path, and not limited by a fear of being seen as too emotional, or by perhaps lacking just these teeny tiny techniques that make sure your message lands. That's all you have to aspire to, and your career will go off. Just imagine what it will do for your career and your business if you had the tools to say yes or no, and you're not in that corner, oh my God, I think I really have to give that presentation. I hope I'll survive. I'll send an email afterwards clarifying some thoughts that I might not get right.
Yeah. And you have that ripple effect as well. Once you improve in one area, it improves your confidence and abilities in so many other areas as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
So Chris, you have shared so many amazing tips. You've been so encouraging and insightful throughout this. But is there anything you feel that we haven't touched on yet that you would like to share with the audience?
Yes, there's just one thought that's always ringing in my mind. As many entrepreneurs, probably everyone listening here, I occasionally go competition shopping. So I visit websites of other speaker coaches in Switzerland, around Europe, to just, get a little glimpse into how they speak about their work. And very often I leave their websites feeling like, heavy. Oh my God. I just have to manage that and this, and then I'll be a great speaker and the doors are open and I'll see great success. But it feels heavy on my shoulders. And especially what I noticed from my clients, they usually have quite a long to-do list already. I think the last thing they want or need is another list on these items of things they need to control or get right. So I'm really trying to focus so much on making it simple, taking weight off their shoulders, because you have all the right to that feeling. And then you can focus uncompromisingly on creating value for your audience, for your clients, because you speak and stand on stage for who you are and not for everything you represent or you've learned to control. And you may allow yourself to go that way, which doesn't necessarily mean working with me, but it doesn't have to become more complicated to be heard or to get that seat at the table or to speak up and lead with confidence and joy. It may also be very easy and fun to do.
What a powerful note to end on. Thank you so much, Chris. So if anyone listening would like to know more about the work that you do, and I think on your website you have some free advice as well that they can benefit from, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Well, you've mentioned it too. I mean, the website is always a great idea. You're right. There is a couple of tips you can download if you like, of things I'm being asked all the time. I've compiled 5 tips to feel more calm and confident. If you want to take that step immediately, you can send me a message and we can schedule a coffee chat to talk about stuff. Of course, I'm always on LinkedIn. That's surely, as for many of you guys as well, a great opportunity to get in touch. And I think I'll leave it with that because these are the 2 simplest and fastest channels to reach me, LinkedIn and my website, I guess.
And can you remind us of what the website is?
Yeah, it's www.lubbers.team.
Lubbers.team. That's Lubbers.
That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you again, Chris.
Thank you very much for having me, and all the best.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you took away as much value as I did. Let me know what your biggest takeaways have been in the comments section below or in the Driven Female Entrepreneur Facebook group. And if you've enjoyed the show, then I would love it if you could leave a review on iTunes and share this podcast with your network and business besties. There are a lot more tools, tips, and insights coming up for you in the next episode, so subscribe now so you never miss your weekly dose of inspiration. And remember to follow my new free training that I've created for you to help you communicate, market, and sell your true value with greater confidence, ease, and joy. You'll find it on the homepage of my website, melitacampbell.com. I've been Melita Campbell, business and communication coach for driven female entrepreneurs, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.